Before we start the questions, I'm going to go over the different functional groups that we have to learn and memorize. We have the functional group. I'm going to write here functional group, and I will also mention the family name. Okay, so the first thing we learned in this lesson was the halogens. We were talking about halogens that I have an alkyl group, so a functional group of halogen, and the family name could be alkyl halide or aryl halide. Aryl halide. And then the alkyl or the aryl halide is a chain. I have a chain, a carbon chain. And for example, on this chain, I have an atom of group 17. It could be F, it could be Cl, it could be Br, or it could be I. So this is an alkyl halide. Now, if the carbon chain is a benzene ring, then this is called an aryl halide. And when we discussed this topic, we didn't talk about uses of alkyl and aryl halide. We only talked about the one property that they have is that they have a high boiling point. So, and of course, if they have a high boiling point, they become polar. The only substance that we learned that it is non-polar was hydrocarbons, alkynes. The rest in all the lessons are all polar. So for alkyl halide and aryl halide, we learned that their boiling point increases when we change, for example, this atom to Cl or Br or I. So if I have a compound CH3, CH2, CH2F, and I'm comparing it to Cl or to Br or to I, the same chain, the boiling point increases because the polarity increase with the increased number of electrons. Here you need to know that if I compare these atoms, as I go down the periodic table, the amount of electrons increases. So it makes the molecule more polar and more energy is needed to break the bonds and change it from liquid to gas. So that was the only property we discussed with halogen functional group or the alkyl and aryl halide. And again, in every lesson, we discuss property, uses, and naming. So if I want to name, I'll just say fluoro or chloro or bromo or iodo, and I name the chain. Like for example here, fluoro, and I have 3 carbons, propane. But I still need to say where's the fluoro because I can add F on the side or in the middle. So this is 2-fluoropropane. Whereas the second one, the aryl halide, because it has a benzene ring, I'm going to say chlorobenzene. When I have one branch, there is no need to say 1-chlorobenzene. I start numbering when I have more than one branch. So that was it, everything for the alkyl and aryl halide. Then I moved to another family and functional group. I moved to the functional group of hydroxyl. Functional group and family name. So I did here together, I did the hydroxyl functional group that belongs to the alcohol family. It's the presence of OH in a compound. That's an alcohol. And I did with it the ether functional group, which belongs to the ether family. So when you have O in the middle of the chain, no double bonds in here. Um, so what did we do in this part? Um, we discussed their physical, we discussed their yeah, the uses of alcohol. We mentioned about the uses of alcohol, that they are used as solvents, fuel, perfumes, even in pharmaceuticals. And I also mentioned the uses of ethers. They used to be used as um, an anesthetic drugs for surgeries, but not anymore because they are very flammable. After the uses, I discussed their properties. I compared their properties, and these were compared together because they have similar properties. Sorry, because they are isomers. So we said that both of them are polar, but alcohol, they are more polar because they contain OH group. I don't see this OH group in the ether. And because they contain OH group, they can do hydrogen bonds. And because they can do hydrogen bonds and ether cannot do hydrogen bonds, the boiling point of alcohol is going to be higher than the boiling point of ether. So it's all related to the presence of OH group and the ability of alcohol to form hydrogen bonds. So that's it. And then we went for naming. Yeah, and also we discussed ether, whether it's symmetrical or asymmetrical. So you need to compare the groups on each side of O. If the groups are the same, symmetrical ether. If they're not the same, then asymmetrical. Now, in naming, you just name the compound in the alcohol and you add all. Like, for example, here I have 2-methyl because I have a branch over here, 2-methyl, and 3 carbon, that is propan, all, propanol. And you have to mention where is this all. So you will say here it's 1. So 2-methyl, 1-propanol. For the ether, you just name each chain and you put YL and ether. Now, since this one is a symmetrical ether, so both sides are called ethyl. So, ethyl ether, I don't have to write ethyl twice. I can say ethyl ether, or I can say, or I can say diethyl ether. I can only do this for functional, for ethers. After this, I went for the amines. I introduced amines. So, as a functional group, I have the amino, and it's the family of amines. So, you have a carbon chain, and there's N in it. So, suppose the N is here, NH2. Okay, these are the amines. We didn't do sorry, properties in uses in amines. We only talked about, no, not even properties, but anyway, these are polar compounds as well, and their boiling point is high. In the lesson of functional group of amines, we learned how to classify amines as primary, secondary, and tertiary. We also did the same for oxygen. Okay, so in the amine, we look to how many carbon groups the amine is connected. So this amine and group is connected to 1 carbon, it's primary. If it is connected to 2 carbons, then it is secondary. If it is connected to 3 carbons, if it's connected to 3 carbons, then it is tertiary. Just like that. Ask daddy. Ask daddy. So here NH2. That's, I'll go back to a primary amine. We did the same for the alcohol. Alcohols can be classified as primary, secondary, and tertiary. So if I have the example given here, carbon has two hydrogen atoms. That is primary alcohol. If if the hydrogen, if the carbon has, let's say here, one hydrogen bonded to it, then this is a secondary alcohol. And if it has no hydrogens bonded to it, this carbon, the carbon where I can find the OH, then it is tertiary. After this part, and I would like to point that I briefly discussed the reactions because we don't have to know much details about it. We are only interested in defining what is a substitution reaction. And a substitution reaction is when you replace an atom in the compound by another atom. And all the organic compounds, in order to react, you need to do one common step to all of them. So if you have an alkane like CH4, you cannot start any reaction unless you remove a hydrogen and put a halogen instead of it. So let's say I have Cl2, that is Cl bonded to Cl. So I'm going to switch those two, substitute those two, and I will get Cl, this coming here, and this will be with the other Cl, HCl. So starting from here, from being alkyl halide, now you can change this alkyl halide into amino if you want, or into a hydroxyl if you want. You cannot do this step from here. So also through a substitution reaction. So if I wanted to go to an amino, I should have, I should add to it NH3. So again, this Cl. So let's add over here NH3. So it's a substitution, it's a replacement. So I'm going to replace these two atoms. I'm going to switch them, replace them. So that is, um, I'm going to replace, I'm going to take this with the Cl and take this whole group to replace it over here. So it's going to be C with NH2, and these will go together. And now it turned into an amine, methanamine. If I don't want it an amine, if I want to change it into an alcohol, then in this case, I have to add a compound H. So these two will go together. Yani I will replace the Cl by OH. I will exchange this. So I'm going to get an alcohol over here and KCl. All you need to know that these kind of reactions are called substitution or halogenation equation, specifically this one, halogenation, because I replaced with a halogen. Then after this part, I did again the functional group of carbonyl and the family name. Yes. So functional group, the carbonyl, C double bond O. Ask that. C double bond O. Now this C double bond O is called carbonyl. And I have two categories in the carbonyl. If this C double bond O has hydrogen atom on it and one alkyl group, alkyl I mean a carbon chain, it belongs to the family of aldehydes. Whereas if it has two alkyl groups, يعني no hydrogen on this C, it will belong to the ketone family name. I also compared the properties of these compounds. Both of them are polar, but this is more polar because it has two alkyl groups. And being more polar, it means that the boiling point will be higher. But they do not have boiling point higher than the one of alcohol because they cannot do hydrogen bonds between each other. They can only do hydrogen bonds with the water molecule. And then after that, we mentioned the uses of each one. So briefly, aldehydes are used for making buttons, appliance, and automotive parts, whereas ketones as a solvent and in fingernail polish. That's it. And then I moved on to the naming. For the aldehyde, I will end it with al, like in here, ethanol. And I don't have to say that this is carbon number one. Whereas in the ketone, for example, I need to say which number is this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a pentanone. The termination would be on, not al. And you will say that it is on the second one. And last thing we did were the functional group of esters and carboxylic acid. So functional group and family name. So here, look at this one. I have a carbonyl functional group. Now, if this carbonyl functional group was bonded to O, to a hydroxyl group, so carbonyl and hydroxyl, I'm gonna remove this part and I'm going to remove this part and join the two words. This is a carboxyl functional group. So a carbonyl and a hydroxyl makes a carboxyl functional group, and this belongs to the carboxylic acid. Now, if this carbonyl group was related to O and the O is connected to another alkyl group, yani carbon chain, this now will belong to the ester family. Okay? Now, the properties that we talked about is that both of them again are polar. I mentioned that this is an acid, and this one is used for fragrances, nice smell, perfumes, candles, flavors. All of these things are the uses of esters. And last thing I mentioned was the naming. So if I have a carboxylic acid, let's say I have this formula. This is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 butane oic acid. So all carboxylic acid will end with oic acid. And on the third, you have a methyl. So you say 3-methyl butanoic acid. Now, if it was an ester, so I have an ester, um, simple esters. Let's not take branched one. So you always name the part that is connected to the O first. So that is a methyl. And then you follow it by the part that is connected to the C double bond O. So these are 4 carbons, butane, and you add the termination on it. That's all. That's it. So I hope that with this briefing, I was able to summarize um, the lesson. Now, moving on to the
Miss,
questions. Yes, I can
I
hear
have a
you.
question.
Go ahead.
Um, when it comes to like the different types of compounds, there are compounds where we have to add like numbering before the, like for example the
Mm.
OH group or like the
Hey,
O group. So I'm not like, I get confused
ex-
between where I have to add the numbering
listen,
and when I don't.
aldehyde and esters, you don't have to say where is, sorry, aldehyde and afwan, and carboxylic acid. Give the functional group a number because it is always at the beginning of the chain. لأنه if it was not at the beginning of the chain, then this is not an aldehyde or this is not a carboxylic acid. All the rest, you have to give the functional group a number. And where do you write that number? You write the number, then you mention the name of the amount of carbons that you have, like مثلا butane, propane, على حسب how much you have, and then you put the correct termination, anon or whatever, amine or alcohol, whatever compound you have. And also, you don't use, you don't number the functional group if you are dealing with benzene compounds with one branch. Did I answer your question properly? Is it clear?
Miss, but if I named
Yes.
it, would it be wrong?
A. For aldehyde and carboxylic acid, yes, it is wrong because the rule says you don't name, you don't put a number. So ما فيك تحطي number. هلا as we go through the naming, you will understand more. Okay? So let me start with this sheet. Which of the following alkyl halides they have the highest boiling point? You don't have to memorize how much electron I have in each one. عندكم periodic table. And since we're doing the quiz on Friday, so I'll make sure to pass for you periodic tables. Um, Let me see. I'll check. I don't think we have the periodic table added in the quiz. Let me just check. So if it's not, I'll pass to you some periodic tables. Okay? Or I'll ask the teacher to open it in class. Yeah, it's not added in the quiz. We will fix this, don't worry. So here, 9 electrons in F, 17 in Cl, 35 in Br, and 53 in iodine. So it means that the highest boiling point will be D, the lowest boiling point will be F, because D is the one that is most polar and is going to require more energy to break it. Now, later. Use the formula of the organic compounds below to identify the families. Be careful to these questions. They are asking you the family, not the functional group. بس I'm gonna split the table in two ونرجع بنعيد both of them. So here I'm gonna write the family and here I'm gonna write the functional group. You have to test yourself and mix them in order to memorize. Hydroxyl, sorry, hydroxyl, family, alcohol. Amino, family, amine. Halogen, this is alkyl, not aryl. Alkyl halide, أو halides, you can say. This is carbonyl and hydroxyl. This is carboxyl functional group for carboxylic acid. halogen for aryl halides, ether for ether. Good, that's the same name. Again, ether for ether. Remember, this means there's a carbon here. يعني هي هيك. So this is an ethyl on both sides. So this is an ether family, ether functional group. Here's the functional group. Note that here there's also carbon, C double bond O. So functional group is ester and family is ester. Again, halogens, functional group is the halogen, and this is an aryl, aryl halide. Again, halogen, but this is an alkyl halide, no benzene ring in it. Hydroxyl functional group, alcohol family. Amino functional group, amine family. So mix the functional groups and families, the organic compound families, and learn it as much as possible. Some uses of alcohols. Do not come to the exam without knowing at least few uses of alcohol. In pharmaceuticals like Panadol. So pharmaceuticals, perfumes, sanitizers, shampoo products, solvent. So just some uses. Okay. Now, there will be questions in the quiz to classify alcohols and to classify amines. There's an expression that I gave you in class, 1 for 2, 2 for 1. What do I mean by this? I locate the hydroxyl group and I look at the carbon holding that carboxyl group. That hydroxyl group. I am counting here 2 hydrogen atoms on carbon, so I say 1, 2 for 1. Now, this is another hydroxyl group, and this is the carbon holding it, and it has 1 hydrogen. I'm counting 1, I say secondary. Here's the hydroxyl group, and the carbon holding it, no hydrogen on it. R يعني it's a chain of carbon, so it's a tertiary alcohol. So again, here's the C connected to the OH. I count 2 hydrogens, I say primary. Here's the OH connected to the C. I have only 1 hydrogen on it, secondary. Here's the OH group and the C holding it, no hydrogen on it. These hydrogens are not for this carbon, so tertiary. Okay, now, which of the following reactions is represented below? You only took one reaction in the whole lesson, and it's a substitution reaction. Substitution, I replaced. Now, since in the choices there is no substitution written, what is X? X belongs to the halogen family, the halogens FCl, Br, and I2. So it's a halogenation reaction. Now, naming, IUPAC naming. This is an alcohol, so the termination has to end with ol. Anol. Anol. Now, I count the main chain. I have here 4 carbons, so that's a butanol. That's a butanol. Okay? Butanol. Now, where exactly the ol? It's on the first carbon. We always count from the side that is closer to the hydroxyl group. So it is 1 butanol, and I have a branch on the third one. of one carbon, so 3 methyl, 1 butanol. Now, how to classify amines? In amines, you can count how many carbons on the end. One carbon chain on N, primary. Two carbon chains on N, secondary. Three carbon chains on N, tertiary. So here's N connected to one carbon, primary. And that is methylamine. That's an N. We are not naming secondary and tertiary amines, not included. So this N connected to 3 carbons, that's a tertiary amine. Oh, wait, sorry. This N is connected to 2 carbons only. That's a hydrogen. So that's a secondary amine. And here N connected to 1, 2, 3 carbons. That is a tertiary amine. Okay? Now again, let's mix up the functional. These are functional groups. Before you start reading and answering, highlight the functional group. This is the functional group in every compound. So, here we go. E is an ester. D is a carbonyl, specifically ketone family. C is an amino functional group. B, C double bond OOH, it's a carboxylic acid family, and it's a hydroxyl, the A. There is no ether given here. To be an ether, I shouldn't see, for example, يعني مثلا E could be an ether if there is no this C double bond O. Then it could be an ether. But it's not. None. Again, functional groups. General formula. Halogen. R is a carbon chain, يعني alkyl group. So it's RX. This is an alcohol and a hydroxyl ether. I have to have C from both sides of O. The family name, the compound type, again is an ether. This one is an amine and the functional group is an amino. Now aldehyde, it's a C double bond O with an H and an R. So it belongs to the carbonyl functional group. Now when the two sides of C are bonded to C chain, it's a ketone. Carboxyl is a carbonyl and a hydroxyl. Remember how I generated the word carboxyl? So it's a carbonyl and a hydroxyl formula, and it's a carboxylic acid. That's an ester, same name and functional group. Amide, we didn't learn the naming, we don't have it. I can write here NH just to make it simple for you. Thiol, I have a sulfur atom in it. Amide, also same name, amide.
With
Yes.
we should memorize the general formula of each one of them.
ايه we all يعني ما هو اساس الجنرال formula يعني if you don't see the formula كيف بدك تعرفي which functional group you have انت you're confused by the R يعني I can remove the R and I can write like C chain عادي just carbon R يعني carbon chain could be 1 2 3 branches okay now Another question again. I have three compounds given. I have a carbonyl X, I have another carbonyl, and I have a hydroxyl. Oh, they want the family name. So X is an aldehyde. ذكروا there's an hydrogen in it. Aldehyde. Y, a ketone. Z, alcohol. All of them are polar. خلاص, the only non-polar we studied in the alkane, alkene, alkyne. Polar, polar. Now, if I want to compare polarity, this comes first, highest. Ketone is a bit lower, and aldehyde is a bit lower than the ketone. But the three of them are high, having alcohol the highest, aldehyde the lowest. Okay? Now, next, IUPAC name. Two carbons in X, that's an ethane. Since this is an aldehyde, al, al. Now, hone in ketone, whoever asked me about the numbering, hone, I don't have to say 2 propanone. لأنه if I have 3 carbons and I want a ketone, there is no other way unless to place the C double bond O in the middle. So whether I said 2 propanone or propanone, it's the same. Okay? بس هون إذا حطيت 2 propanol, it is not considered wrong because ketone we do have to number the functional group. So 2 or simply propanone. The pen is not writing anymore. 2 propan and on because it's a ketone. The last one again is ethane and all because it's an alcohol. Ethanol, there is no need to say one ethanol. يعني وين بدنا نحطها؟ It's either on this carbon or this carbon. So it's simple. So there's no need to say one ethanol. It is just ethanol. Solubility in water, all soluble. All of them. The only insoluble compounds we talked about in the alkane, alkene, alkyne. Being polar, it means they are soluble. And of course, alcohol, the highest solubility. If I want to compare it, aldehyde, the lowest solubility. Next, yeah, almost there. Given the organic compound, give the IUPAC name. Again, this is an alcohol. Again, this has to end with anol. How many carbons? 4. So butanol. Where exactly the all? I count, it's on the second. If there's a branch somewhere, مثلا, I would say 3-methyl 2-butanol. Okay? Now, to which family does this compound belong? It belongs to the family of alcohols. Name the functional group. Hydroxyl functional group. Give one physical property. يعني you can say it is soluble, it is polar, it has a high boiling point. These are physical properties. It dissolves in water, يعني soluble. One use as a solvent, perfumes, pharmaceuticals, fuel, sanitizers, كل Classify it. Is this compound given here secondary, primary, or tertiary? This is the carbon holding the OH group. And on this carbon, I only count one hydrogen. So 1, 4, 2. It's secondary. Here's another question. What are we comparing here? Hydroxyl to ether. In other words, we are comparing an alcohol to ether. they both have the same number of carbons. So the name of A is, this side is methyl and this side is ethyl, M and E. E comes first alphabetically, so ethyl, methyl, ether. If they said name compound B, it is 1-propanol. I have to say where is the all بركي هون. So it is 1-propanol. Which one has a higher boiling point? The one with the OH group. So compound B justify the presence of OH group in it. OH group allows it to form hydrogen bonds between its molecules and with water. Hydrogen bonds are strong bonds. يعني we need more energy to boil it. So hey, justification. I don't have OH in compound A. So compound A polar بس ما بيعمل hydrogen bond. It cannot do hydrogen bonds. So the boiling point is high, but not as much as the one of alcohol. Okay, between its molecules. So boiling point will be higher. Which one is more water? Both of them are water soluble. Both of them. But which one is more water soluble? Of course, the one that is more polar, the one that is forming hydrogen bonds more, will be more water soluble. What will be the name of compound B if the OH group okay يعني بدل ال OH I have an H. Okay, let's change it. So هون عندي NH2. شو بده يكون الاسم؟ بدل ما نقول propanol, instead of saying propan all 1 راح نقول propanamine 1. Done. That's it. So here's a comparison between alcohols and ether. Remember, no hydrogen bonds in the ether. وهيدي الهيدروجين bonds بتخلي البويلينج point يكون less soluble. Now volatile means to change to gas below the boiling point. يعني تغير to gas. إذا البوiling point is high, we need more time to change it to gas. So it's gonna be less volatile. عكس بعض. If the boiling point is less, then we will turn it into gas faster قبل. So it's gonna be more volatile. What has a low boiling point has high volatility. What has a high boiling point has low volatility. Again, similar question. Name A and B. A is methyl ether. ما في داعي أقول dimethyl ether because it's symmetrical. وإذا قلنا dimethyl ether, still correct. This is ethan, all alcohol. Higher boiling point, the alcohol. More, okay. This one, higher boiling point, less volatile. So more volatile will be A. Now, based on their structure, which compound is more water soluble? أكيد alcohol. The alcohol. Compound B. Justify. It can make hydrogen bonds, whereas ether cannot make hydrogen bonds. And if it makes hydrogen bonds, then it needs more energy to change it from liquid to gas. So the boiling point will be higher.
Miss, can't we just say that it's smaller?
بلا
That's
we
more
can
polar
say طب ما ليش more polar؟
because of the OH.
رجعت قلتيها لكن والO H بتخليه يعمل hydrogen bonds. يعني فيك تقولي because this has OH this one doesn't have OH. طيب شو يعني؟ شو بدي افهم انا اذا فيها OH the other one ما فيها؟ يعني this can make hydrogen bonds this cannot make hydrogen bonds. That's the reason. اوكي. هون ناسي شيل الانسرز. طيب comparison between aldehyde and ketones كمان both of them are polar. Both of them they can't form hydrogen bonds بين بعضهم between their molecules but they can form hydrogen bonds مع water. اوكي. وهيدا الشيء بيعلي هلا being polar their boiling point will increase بس ما بيتعدى ال boiling point of alcohol. يعني it's not as much as high as alcohols. و if I wanna compare aldehyde للكيتون بعيد aldehyde they have one alkyl group ketones they have two alkyl groups. يعني ال boiling point of ketone higher من الالdehyde. So they are more soluble than the aldehyde, more polar than the aldehyde, but both of them not as much as alcohol. وهون we are comparing aldehyde solubility عن الالكين. طب ما الالكين they are non-polar, they are not soluble. This is a question that came in the end of term exam last year. End of term exam too. So they asked for the family. انتبهوا. We cannot answer carbonyl. ما في يقول carbonyl. It will be considered wrong. Family يعني بدي أقول ketone aldehyde. So ketone aldehyde. If you write carbonyl, you lost the mark. Polar or non-polar? كله polar. احفظوا بالend of term exam only alkane, alkene, alkyne, non-polar. Finish. The rest of the lessons polar. Now the uses. Buttons for aldehyde. لحظة نشوف السؤال بده which of the following are uses of V. Yes, aldehyde. Okay, buttons. Appliances automotive parts. هودي كلهم aldehyde. Fingernail polish for ketones. Candles و perfumes for ester. Okay. Okay, now the naming. On the naming. On classic ladies page 20, that page with the suffixes with the terminations memorize it. خلينا نبلش. al يعني I have an aldehyde I should have C double bond O. طيب كم كربون؟ واحد just one done خلص. methanol. okay لو ethanol I would place another carbon هيك. okay now sorry this is the one here انكتب. So again this is an aldehyde al with two carbons يعني ethanol مش ethyl. انتبهوا there should be an so ethanol. Now this is benzene ring with a carbonyl aldehyde يعني بدل ما نقول بنزين بنزينال. okay 2 propanone on يعني كيتون. how many carbons prop 3. هيدي ما لازم تكون هيدي على الثاني يعني this is 2 there's 1 and there's a 3. always never forget to put the hydrogens. 2 butanone on ketone يعني عندي C double bond O وين على السكند يعني قبلها في first 3 and 4 so that's the formula. 2 carbons this is carboxyl. وما نحفظ الترمينيشن أويك acid so anoic acid. كم carbon? 2. So لحظة نقربها. ethanoic acid. We don't number here. No need. Because to be a carboxylic acid, it has to be on the side. 2 more minutes. Wait. Now, propyl ethanoate. OH يعني ester. Just like this one. This is an ester. يعني لازم يكون عندي C double bond O O. فيني أحط ال O on the other side. It doesn't matter. Now the propyl البارت اللي بتاخد YL is the part connected to O. And that is made up of 3 carbons. 1, 2, 3. Now the one carbon attached to the OH termination هي the one attached to the C double bond O. يعني I have 2 carbons. 1, 2. I'm done. All I have to do now, fill it with hydrogens. This one here, انتبهوا. This is the part connected to the O. That's an ethyl. And this is the part connected to the C double bond O. That's an ethanoate. So ethyl ethanoate. And that's it. I'm done. I think we're done. So any questions that you have? Any questions? Okay. So I'm gonna end the recording. I'll be posting this video on my channel.